Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Good.
Yes, sir.
I'm audible, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So, yeah, so let me request one of you whose background, there's not too much background noise, to keep your phone or mic unmuted so that I can get some noise feedback that I know that I am not disconnected from. It doesn't matter who is it. Can anybody unmuted them? Okay, I can see Rahul Mishra is unmuted. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So yeah. So tell me, how is it going? So your assignments are due today, right?
Yes, sir.
So how far is it? Any doubts so far on the stuff that has been done? So I mean, I have not uploaded any new videos, and today also we will be doing it. I'm taking it very lightly. I mean, we will have just some background stuff that we'll do if we do anything. But
Uh,
on the
Sir,
video, that yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, sir. Related to the correctness of algorithm, proof of correctness of algorithm that you discussed in the video.
Right.
So you gave an example, and the idea was established. But can we see it in like two, three more concrete cases? Like
Yes, of
how to
course.
exactly
We will
write
see that. I
it?
mean, more and more
And
algorithms that we see, we will see the proof of correctness. Right. I mean,
and also the
yeah,
yeah,
analysis
that
of the
that
language.
was that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, so basically what I wanted to convey to you guys is that the proof of correctness and the analysis of runtime are very theoretical stuff. Okay, so it has a formal proof, and that has to be. I mean, it has to have very formal proof, and so you have to write it up in a formal way, give a formal proof of it. And so this example, so we have not seen too many examples of algorithms yet, right? We have only seen basically binary search in some sense. So for binary search, we saw that the exact what is the proof of correctness. So in the from next class or maybe from tonight only, I will upload a video of for the next set of algorithms, which we will call sorting algorithms. And there we will again, yeah, I don't know whether I will give you the formal proofs of it straight away, but maybe again, like last time, I will first explain you the algorithms, tell you the fact, give you an intuition, and let you guys think about it a bit, and then we will give you a formal proof of correctness at some point of time. Okay. Again, as I told you that I mean, with time, I mean, you should be familiarized, and within a few weeks you will be familiarized with this concept of thinking algorithmically, such that small functions, small algorithms like this binary search and all. I mean, you will not even. I mean, it will be like. I mean, you will not be giving a proof of correctness as such, right? I mean, see, I mean, one proof of correctness that you can think of is actually the GCD algorithm. Okay, so the Euclid algorithms that was there, fine. So first of all, why is that algorithm gives the correct answer? I mean, that's purely from the number theory point of view, right? And secondly, why is the runtime log n? That's another algorithm that we have seen. You can try to prove this the correctness as well as the runtime complexity. I think you should be able to do it. Yeah. So there also there was a loop, for loop. So exactly what is being stored in the for loop, right? What is the property that is going on in the for loop? If you remember this Euclid's algorithm, what is it that is being stored, that is being maintained? Okay. So yeah. So maybe although it's not given as an exercise or any such thing, but you should think about that formal proof. Again, it should be kind of very simple and clear to you guys. Right? But any other questions?
So for the bonus problem,
Yeah.
if we can't think of any log squared n algorithms, should we just try some log n algorithm and just some order of n algorithm or something?
You can give an order of n algorithm. Okay. You get some marks possibly for that or something like that. But I mean, the fun is actually trying to prove the log square algorithm. So see, I mean, I can give you one hint. I have given you to that hint to many of you who have sent me this email or asked me doubts and all. Um, so, uh, and I would say that since anyways, I will not be explaining that algorithm or any such things till Thursday. So if you want, you can submit it by before next class also. It's perfectly fine with me as such. So the idea is the first is that try to find in order log n whether the number of fake points is odd or even. That's the hint. Hint is that if in that setting, can you find whether the number of fake points is odd or even? So you have two parts to it. Now prove that this algorithm you can find out, and secondly, you have to uh, prove that that once you have that algorithm, you can complete the whole algorithm, meaning finding the total number of them in log square n. Yeah, I know a couple of you have got it, and I'm really happy that you guys did it, and I am sure the people who got it were excited after getting it. It is quite a neat algorithm, to say the least. Very exciting. So try it out. Try it out. Think of it as a kind of a nice challenge problem kind of stuff. It will really, yeah, get your brains working nicely. Okay, by the way, there was an open problem also, right? So whoever has managed to get something, or whoever has not even managed to get something on that upper bound, can try to prove something on the lower bound direction. And and that is of course open throughout the whole semester. I mean, or what I mean, if you, if you can solve that open problem, I mean, you will surely get some nice rewards. So you don't even have to completely close it. So right now, what we have is that login is the best known lower bound. Now, why login? I mean, think about it. I mean, login number of weighings is completely essential. Okay. But can you prove that something more number of weighings are essential? Any more questions? I mean, I can ask a poll maybe. How many of you have? Okay, let me just start a poll. Yeah. So, any more questions? Tell me.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, means I wanted to know means how means generally computers have addition, multiplication, or say calculate logarithm of some number. Means how
Yeah.
they are implemented in some computer.
Oh, we
In
will do
general,
that. We will certainly do that. So it is there actually in the, I think, fifth or sixth lecture where we actually will show you how addition or multiplication and all, yeah, particular multiplication, addition, those things are done. Okay, in computer, how many steps is required and all. So for now, okay, just to make it, I mean, if in case you have anything, so usually it is considered to be say, I mean, it is, so whenever we say something, okay, whenever we kind of measure the number of steps of algorithm and something like that, you think of the number of multiplication, the number of addition. I mean, we count the number of multiplications, the number of additions that is required. We think of it that number of additions takes order one time, number of multiplications takes order one time, and we work on that. Okay, a fixed number of times. That is not true. Technically, that is not true. Okay, so if you really have to count number of steps, then lot more clever calculations has to be done. But for simplicity of analysis of runtime, usually we say that how many number of multiplications are required. You'll very soon see in the next time that we talk about this sorting algorithms and all, we will say that number of comparisons. Addition is free. Such kind of stuff like that we will say. Okay, so such kind of stuff. So we will surely do that. Hello. Yeah. Anything else?
Sir,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sir, in the assignment, when you said like write an efficient algorithm, what exact order of what exact complexity are you like calling efficient?
I mean, again, there is no particular thing. Okay, so it means that your goal to come up with an algorithm. Okay, analyze the runtime and check whether you can find a better algorithm or not. Okay, and if not, I mean, there's two things you can do. Either you can try to find out a better algorithm or try to prove that, oh, that is the best algorithm that can be done. Okay, I mean, so if somebody comes up with an order n algorithm, that is fine, but somebody comes up with an order log n algorithm, that's even better, and that person will get some more credit. Okay, so this is how, I mean, and I will kind of be giving this kind of questions throughout this whole semester, and because this is how we also work. Okay, in our research, that find an efficient algorithm or work on an efficient algorithm. What is the efficiency? We don't know. Okay, what is the best efficiency we can achieve? We don't know. Okay, so the question is that can we do better? That is one direction, or can't we do better? So in some sense, you should have slowly get a hang of what can be done, what can be expected, a quick lower bound, a quick upper bound, such kind of stuff you should ask yourselves. Okay, so these are kind of, I mean, I'm not even telling you the exact problem in some sense, if you want to say. But if somebody comes up with an order n algorithm, he'll get some marks. If somebody comes up with an order square root n algorithm, he'll get some more marks. If somebody comes up with an order log n algorithm, somebody gets even more marks. And that is how it will go. And I mean, and in some sense, I am not even asking you guys to not talk among yourselves. Okay, feel free to talk among yourselves. I really encourage you guys to talk among yourselves. I mean, of course, I mean, don't end up copying each other, but discussion and all is perfectly fine. Okay, I mean, you can ask your friends that, oh, in this problem, have you got a log n algorithm? Or this is the algorithm that is the bound that I have got. Have you found a better one? I mean, such kind of stuff are completely fine with me. Okay, don't copy. I mean, don't. But if you want to, I mean, discuss with your friends. Even if you have an algorithm and your friend also has an algorithm, and both of you want to kind of verify each other's algorithm whether this is right or wrong, go for it. I have no issues about it. The goal is to learn. Okay, marks comes later on. So that would help you to learn. Go for it.
Sir,
Yeah.
And do we also have to write the complexity of the algorithm that we give in the question?
Yeah. You have to write the complexity. Yeah. So maybe I will talk a little bit on that today in this video if I have some time. So it is fine if you write the asymptotics. Okay, now whatever is asymptotics, as far as I understand that you were not taught asymptotics at all in the discrete math, and maybe some of you know a little bit of the asymptotic notations and all. So I will be spending, and I have given you notes for that, but I will spend some time, maybe half an hour today, on the asymptotics of this.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, I have a question regarding the submission of the assignment.
Okay.
Sir, where do we submit the assignments? To email to you or?
In classroom. In classroom.
Sir, is there an option over there? I mean, we are not familiar with it.
There is an option over there. Okay, you go there, and there will be a place where you can submit it. You have registered. You have registered yourself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So there's an option for add or create your work. That's the one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And sir, for the bonus problem, I was not able to completely solve it. So could we be given some extra time just for the bonus problem?
Yeah, sure. I mean, at some point of time, I will discuss that problem with you. Okay. I would like to tell you the solutions and all. That is certainly not today. That will be happening on Thursday. I mean, earliest by Thursday. Now, if many of you want to work a little bit further, I'm perfectly fine with it. Okay, then I will basically discuss it only on maybe next week or something like that.
So, sir, could we submit the assignment by tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
No, you have set the deadline today midnight. So can we submit by tomorrow early morning? Because many people work in the night only.
You submit it by day after tomorrow early morning is no problem. Okay, I'm not a stringent person. I'm not very strict about this kind of deadlines. Okay, you have to submit it before the next class, before I start discussing maybe the problems.
Sure, sir. That is fine. I mean, that problem told something, so I was thinking of adding on that. So.
Sure.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any more? Hello. Okay, I have started a poll. Can you see it? Oh, sorry. What is this? This is a useless poll. Sorry. Yeah, this one. Sorry, yeah. Oh, did I make? Hold on. This is something I'm creating right now. I need to maybe edit it. Just give me 1 second. Okay. Yeah, so in the meantime, just go ahead and tell me about what are the problems you have. Any other problems you have? Any other doubts? Any other questions?
Sir, I had one question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sir, my internet connection was a bit unstable for a few minutes. Can you repeat what you say in last 1 minute?
I have not said anything useful. So you will forget.
Okay.
Sir, I wanted to ask you about the optimality of the possible optimality of that question in the assignment. Like which one? The one you said about finding both the max and min in at most 3n/2.
Right.
And I suppose you had given an assignment in the video also about like finding the optimal algorithm that gives both the max and min of an unsorted thing. So I am guessing that about 3n by 2 should be the should be the minimum complexity for any algorithm that achieves the tasks, but I am having a difficulty in being able to prove that. I don't know where to start from.
Okay, think about it. Okay, yeah, I will discuss this problem. I'm certainly
Okay,
discuss this problem later on. Okay.
Okay, sir.
I want you guys to think about it. Okay. But you got the upper bound. You got the algorithm.
I got the algorithm that does it within 3n by 2 steps.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Okay. Fine.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Regarding that 3n by 2, I also have one question.
Yeah.
So while we were achieving that, so suppose we are writing a computer program for doing that, then we make 3n by 2 comparisons between the numbers, or the total program must make that many comparisons? Because if we do that, we have to run a for loop, and for loop also makes the comparison for every iteration.
Very good point. Okay. Yeah. So we ideally meant among the numbers.
Okay, sir.
I really meant among the numbers.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So see, I have launched a poll. Hopefully this time it is correct. Okay. There is a interesting set of results. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so it seems that okay, around 30 people have clicked, which is fine. Good. So I hope that whoever, I mean, so most of you have seen almost all the videos. That's good. Yeah, and I don't understand why only 30 people clicked on this poll. But that's okay. There are 32 people who have right now on this. Anyways, any more questions, or should I just go to explaining you a little bit on the asymptotic notations? Hello, am I there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so in that case, let me just have a little bit of saying about these asymptotic notations. Okay, so the asymptotic notations, yeah, so this is actually a notation that was started in the number theory world. Okay, so we share my screen. Okay, so this is the notation on the asymptotic notations. Oops. Asymptotic notation. Okay, so they started from the number theory world, mostly from the number theory world, and but now it has been used both in number theory and in theoretical computer science a lot. I mean, a huge amount. It has been used for other subjects also. For example, a little bit of representation theory and such kind of places. So what is this notation says, and why do we need this notation to start with? Okay. So let's start with a very simple question. Okay. I want to know how many primes are less than n. Now think of this question. Okay, how many primes are there less than n? Now this question, of course, is a question that depends on n. So in some sense, this is a kind of a function of n, right? So it's a function of n. So the answer is a function of n. Okay, so I can say it f of n, or maybe I just call p of n. Okay. Now, if I have to really, so okay, what is the best thing I can come up? The best thing would have been if I could have produced a proper function of n, something like a very complicated number. Okay, p of n equals to n minus 1 plus square root n minus plus n by log n. I don't know what all things will be there and all. Okay, maybe, but this will be kind of a very unyielding set of object, right? It's a completely useless set of object, because this such a thing, even if it exists, will be very hard to work with. So instead, what people are interested in is what is the behavior. So what are the behavior of this function p of n? Now, so in this case, we can say that how does the p of n behave as n goes to infinity? Or is there a lower bound of p of n? Or is there an upper bound of p of n? Right? Is p of n always better than square root n? Is p of n always less than n to the power 3/4? Such kind of questions are the kind of questions that people want. Okay. So here is a function that is very hard to explain, and still we want to know something about that function, right? And maybe many of you have known this function and you have seen this function. I'm sure if I ask you, you will be able to tell me what this function is. How many of you have seen this function? Anybody know this function? Hello?
So that is asymptotically equal to n by log n.
Right. So it is kind of thought to be n by log n. Now, what is this? How is it related? Is it equal to? No, it is not equal to. Is it less than equal to? Actually, even that is not true. Is it greater than equal to? That is also possibly not true. But what it is true is, this is what is called this notation. Okay, so this is the next best thing to equality. Okay, it is called the asymptotically equal. What does it mean? So asymptotically equal is basically the best that you can think for. Okay, so it is comparing two different functions. So I have a two function on the, it is usually a function on the so this is a function that takes natural numbers to natural numbers, you can think of. Okay, and the idea is that as n tends to infinity, f of n equals to g of n. Okay, if this is the case, so sorry, I made a stupid mistake. So we say that f is asymptotic equal to g. This definition is that as limit n tends to infinity, f of n equals to g of n. So this is the next best thing that you can think of asymptotically equal, of equality, right? So this
Sir,
kind of, yeah.
the expression on the left-hand side is independent of n.
I mean, it's a function, right? Yeah. These two functions are asymptotically equal. So it is not a function is asymptotically to on n. So the function as a whole is asymptotically equal. So there is a function which is p of x, right? It's a function from natural number to natural numbers. And there is a function which is in this case n by log n, right? Which is also a function that is it takes from natural number to natural number. So these two functions, okay, are asymptotically equal. So asymptotically equal is nothing to do with at which point and all. It is basically this. I mean, in other words, you can think of it is that once you have this kind of a stuff, right, as n equals to infinity and all, this n will disappear, right? It's like a, I mean, what happens when you have a summation over n? The n disappears, right? Or expectation over n disappears. Similarly, when you take a limit on n disappears. Right. So the right hand side is also, yeah.
n by log n may not be natural number.
Okay, it's not natural number. You're right. So maybe I should make it real. Okay. Yeah. So actually, it is not n by log n. It is actually box of n by log n and so on and so forth. But that's okay. Don't worry about that. Again, you can see that if a function of this form has this thing, the box function will also have the same property.
So saying that f is asymptotically equal to g and then defining it as limit n going to infinity fn is equal to gn.
Yes. No. I'm not defining this one. So maybe I should write it formally here. So we say f is equal if limit n, if this limit is equals to gn, or you want to write it in another way, that's also fine. Maybe that will be help us in slightly better, right? If g equals to, if g is equals to f, or in other words, if you want to can say, or limit of f minus g, f of n minus g of n minus g of n, doesn't matter the absolute value or distance, n goes to infinity is equals to 0. Okay, happy? Fine. Yeah. So now this is the second best. Now I think what you should be more worried about is the fact that why, if I know what this exact function of p n is, then why really do I care about the asymptotic notation? So I can give you another example of this, and that might be very useful. How many of you have heard of Ramanujan? Nobody has heard of Ramanujan?
Yes, everyone.
Yes,
Maybe.
sir.
Okay, very good. How many of you have heard of what is his main contribution?
Partition of a natural number.
How many of you have know? How many of you knew about it? How many of you thought that he could only do some nice jugglery with numbers of taxi numbers and all? Okay, good. So people knew about it, I hope. Okay, so this is called the partition number. What is a partition number? Partition number is that if you are given a natural number n and you are asked to write it as a0 plus a1 plus a2 plus something, okay, plus at, where all you are saying is that I am not worried about the ordering of that. That means you can say that a0 is less than equal to a1 is less than equal to a2 is less than equal to at. I also don't care about how many t's are there. And I also, and all I need is that they are all natural numbers, and this, all of them are natural numbers, right? So the AIs are natural numbers, right? Then how many ways can you write n? Okay, this is called the partition number of this number n. Okay, this also has this notation p of n. It's a capital P usually denoted as, right? So for example, what is p of 5? So 5 can be written as, right? Oh, sorry, these are all greater than 0. So 5 can be written as 5, or it can be written as 1 plus 4, or it can be written as 2 plus 3, or it can be written as 1 plus 1 plus 3, or it can be written as 1 plus 2 plus 2, or it can be written as 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2, or it can be written as 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. Any other way? Oh, I think this is all right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So P of 5 is 7. Right? So this is an example, right? So you can see that the partition number is a function that takes a natural number and outputs you another natural number. Now, how big is that? How nice is it? And all. Okay. So the story goes this following. Okay. Story goes that, Ramanujan was like a freakish genius. So what he did is that he produced a function. Okay. He almost from out of his hat produced a function that somehow he could write P of n almost exactly. And a few years later, with another person, Rademacher, he and Hardy could exactly compute it. Have you guys seen that partition number function? Partition function? How many of you have seen this partition function? Anybody have seen the partition function?
Yes, sir.
You have seen? Was it done in your class earlier, or is it just a curiosity?
Sir, I saw it in the PDF.
Yeah, PDF given.
Oh, okay. I didn't PDF. Okay, right. So here is the function. Okay. So look at this one. Can you see this? Can you see my cursor?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
P of n is this huge quantity. We even have a hyperbolic sign, pi, k, God knows what all stuff, 1 by 24 and all, square root. And then there is another object, a to the power k, which is dependent on n. And you put this n and you have an exponential over there, right? Sorry, no. The a to the power kn is this one. Okay, go up here. Akn is this quantity. E to the power pi I smk minus something, and smk is the function smk is the dedicant sum, another complicated stuff that we call. Now, this is where I think Ramanujan's genius is. Like, can you even imagine that such a complicated function magically has the property that you put in n equals to a natural number, and this whole thing becomes a integer. It is almost hard to imagine, right? So, Ramanujan is superbly great. But this is kind of hard to it is great to kind of understand that this partition number has such a nice structure and all. And now we know a little bit more of how to obtain this partition number and have some intuition about how did Ramanujan came about it. It was not his goddess from Namakal who gave him this idea, but he had some ideas behind it, and which we now call harmonic analysis. Only from the harmonic analysis concept we can understand some of it. But understand that this is pretty, I mean, if I have to use this one number, okay, and somebody told you that, oh, so this is the partition number. Then if I ask you, so is it as big as n square, or is it as big as n to the power 100, or is it as big as exponential in n? Do you have any idea? No idea, right? So in fact, Ramanujan also initially did not come with this equality. He came up with this thing in the top, you can see, right? And there is slightly different. This hyperbolic sign was that exponential there. Okay. But this is also quite unhandy, right? You cannot use it. You have no idea how big is that partition number. Instead, if somebody looks at this quantity, which is the same as P of n here, okay? But this is much more understandable, right? So from here, you can understand that P of n is actually an exponential in square root n. The rest of it are some constants. But the main important dependence on n is that it is 1 by n into exponential in some constant times square root n. See, now you have a much better understanding of what this partition number is. Although it is hiding a lot, it is not saying it. It is only at the asymptotic levels that is happening. But if you have to get a feel of this partition number, how big is it, then this expression is way more handier than something here. The Ramanujan's partition function, or this one, is something to be very impressed by, no doubt about it. It's the outstanding piece of mathematics. But when you have to use something, you need this kind of stuff, right? So this is where asymptotics come up, where you don't necessarily worry about the exact function, because I at the end of the day have to have some understanding, some intuition about how big is this quantity, right? Here you have some idea. So simpler and simpler stuffs you can write. Now look at this particular function, okay? And if I just write it down here, so I have write down here P of n is, let me show you. Okay, so this is the P of n, right? Now, the question is that if I have to compare now, if somebody comes up and says that, oh, see, I have got another function which is somehow has been some nice number. He has come up with some other quantity or something else. And said, oh, this is actually equals to e to the power exponential to the power 100,000 into square root n into n square, right? Now, which of these are bigger, right? Maybe these both of them are, say, equality. I have two functions, say, and I have to understand which of them are bigger. How do I have to understand that? Or are they kind of similar, right? So this is where we have to go for one more step. So till now, the asymptotic notations here is a very stringent thing. It is just a little bit lower than equality. It is a thing where you can say that as with n goes to infinity, these two quantities are similar. But maybe there are times I am not too worried about just that, right? All I'm interested in is that if I draw a plot, right? There's a Qn and there's a Pn. So the Pn can have some curves here and then maybe go up. And there's a Qn, maybe I'll use a different color, maybe start from much higher, but then at some point of time, just, oh, this is a very bad thing. This is not even a curve. And then goes down, or not even goes down completely. Say it kind of goes this one and goes like this. Now you can understand that at some point of time, that means this two curves start diverging. Okay, right? So again, that is one issue that can happen. The other thing that can happen is that this P of n might be that I have a number. So I can give you another example. If I just remove this curve, and somebody has come up with another function which says that, see, this function is actually for n prime, it is n square n cube e to the power exponential to the power n, and for n not prime, it is square root n exponential times cube root n, right? Now see, how do we compare this Rn with Qn? If you see it, if you try to take a limit, the limit doesn't even exist, right? Because the Pn by Rn is a fluctuating number function. It is not even, if you're not even having a right value, it's not, the limits is not useful at all, right? So under such situations, we come up with the next best object, which is basically a less, what we can call as less than, right? So in classically, we would say that, oh, see, P of n, say we would say that, see, P is less than Q if for all n, P of n is less than Q of n, right? Now this is something, yeah. So this is what an upper bound will be, right? I can have an upper bound, but I am not being too, I don't want to be too restrictive. So instead, what I want to kind of say is that we want to have this new definition, and this is important. Okay, so again, if P and Q, okay, if P and Q okay, they are all from natural numbers to say real numbers. Okay, then we say that P is, now this is called a big O. Okay, we have, so this is what is called as a big O. Big O, sorry, not of n, big O of Q. If, what is the idea? First of all, there should be the idea is that P, okay, I will write down this thing and we will say it, write the quantifiers later on, right? So P of n should be less than Q of n, but not less than Q of n. I am happy if I can multiply a big constant and add a big constant. I am not too worried about the constants here. A universal constant, if I can add A and B, such that for all n, now who is for all n? I'm not too worried about what happens if the n's are small. So for all n bigger than n naught, if I have that P of n is bigger than qn plus b, less than aqn plus b. So that means there exists a n naught, a and b. They are all natural real numbers, real positive real numbers there. Okay, such that this happens. So this is kind of almost the equivalence of saying that P is less than Q, but up to a constant factor. I'm not too worried about it. So this basically says that I'm not too worried about what happens initially. I'm more worried about at the extreme cases. And this kind of says that I am not too worried about constant factors. So you give me n square and somebody gives me 2n square. I don't think they are any different. They're more or less same. Okay. So in that respect, this quantity, right? Remember this quantity. different colors here. This thing, this can be, these are all constants here, right? Fine. So we can remove it. I mean, how do I write it here? Maybe I could copy it. So if I just have this one and I copy it here, right? So this, I can say that P of n is big O of 1 by n. I don't care about the square r, square root 3 and all. They are just some constant numbers, right? Times exponential into, now there is two ways of writing this whole thing. Okay, see, I can leave it as it is, or I can write it as this is the order of, okay, square root n. Meaning this gives us a lower upper bound of P of n. Okay, so this is, so you can see it is, now it has become very simple kind of stuff. You can see it. It's an exponential in square root n divided by n. Now you'd say that why can I bring this O out? Now I will leave you guys to prove that, okay, P of n is not O of exponential in square root n by n. Meaning you cannot remove, because oh, these are constants, so why not take all the constants out and so on and just put them. This is not. Okay, I leave you as an exercise. Okay, a constant on the top, okay, is, so this quantity is O of square root n. This quantity is O of 1 by n. All those things are fine. But this whole quantity, so this whole thing is the O of this, whatever is written there. But you cannot remove this O completely. That constant on the exponent is very important. Okay. Fine. So maybe let's do some examples over here. Something like, say, n log n. This is O of n square. This is O of 10,000 n square. This is also O of n square by 10,000 plus 10,000 n. Okay. So in other words, what important is that the, if you look at the formula, the largest polynomial factor, okay, largest factor is the crucial important thing. Okay, the largest factor is the biggest. So this basically says that, oh, this largest factor is n log n, and here the largest factor is n square, and this is n square, and this is n square. Okay, fine. So n log n is O of, right? So this is the definition of big O. Now you can do the opposite also, right? Like for example, you said, oh, so this is big O of this, right? You can tell me, you can accuse me that, see, just because you like Ramanujan, you are saying that P of n is less than this quantity with the no. But this quantity, on the other hand, is also big O of P of n. If it is just a constant multiple of each other, then how does it matter? And that is true, right? So there we have the next definition, and this is kind of another very useful definition, that if f is a big O of g, meaning that f is less than g up to a constant factor, and g is also a big O of f, okay, then we say that f is theta of g. That means f is within the range of. So if I draw this curve kind of stuff like that, you will see what happening. Okay, so I have a function f. Okay, now this means that there exists a constant. Okay, what is the O of n? So if there is a, if I can draw a, if I can multiply f with a particular constant, so this is f and this is some c times f. Okay, and if a g exists, green line, if a g exists, that can do a lot of things, but is within this blue curve or less than the blue curve, then I am happy to say that f and g are kind of similar, right? At least I can say that g is less than f. Okay. Now it's very well possible that g is like this, and maybe at some point it goes very low, and something like that happens. In that case, I can say that this function g is less than c of f, but that's all I can say, right? But if I have another thing, right, which is that I multiply f in another direction, okay, and this is say d times f, d being less than 1, right? D is less than 1, this is c is more than 1, right? And if this function g, again, after some point of time at least, is within this range, then we say that, oh, this f, g is within this upper and lower bound of f. So it is, again, limit doesn't exist. It's not the limit, because this function g and f can be very weirdly, very weird, okay? Which means that the function, the limits will not be hard, is very hard to kind of find. But this f and g after some point, right? So this after some point is say here, right? This is this n0. After some point of time, f and g is within a constant factor of each other. Okay, or in other words, g is less than a constant factor of f and more than a constant factor of f. Then we say that f is theta of g. So in some sense, you can say that the theta of g is the next best thing to asymptotics. So asymptotic is limit n tends to infinity, it goes and becomes equal. Okay, so there the constant matters, right? So for example here, if you see, right, p of n is not only this, but p of n is actually theta of this object. Okay, because this quantity is a theta of this, and this quantity is also theta of this. So in other words, this is how good I can write. Fine. Right? Now, there are a few more stuff that I should kind of say. Okay, there are two more definitions. And the next definition is that what happens if I have a g, say f is equals to n square and g equals to n log n. Right? Now I see that g is equals to big O of n square or big O of f. That is not a problem. But g is not theta of f. You can prove that. Okay, so this is something you can take as an exercise. So prove. In other words, g can actually become very low. Okay. So in some sense, if g and f are there, and if say I could have taken in limit, if the functions f and g were very smooth and nice and all those things, such that f by g can be taken as a limit, okay, then that ratio f by g is a number that is, okay, you cannot take a limit, but the number is not going to a limit, but the number is between a constant, right? This is what it says, that f by g is within c and d of each other, right? F by g is less than c and bigger than d. So this is theta means. Here you cannot do that. So the ratio can go beyond any constant, right? So this is what we call as, so this is maybe the last definition that I want to talk about. Is that in that case we say that G is small o of f. Now this is when you are writing it, it's become very complicated because the small and big are very hard to see. Okay, but small o of f, if this is kind of easy, right? That limit. Now small o of f means what? That means it is not theta, meaning that G is much smaller than f. That means G by f is not, the ratio is not above any constant. What does it mean? It means that if I take n goes to infinity, this is equals to 0. So G by f is small o of f. So you have these definitions. Okay, so what all things did you learn? So we learned asymptotic, we learned the big O, we learned the theta, and we learned small o. Okay, right? Now there are the opposite, like say, I mean, I should get the duals of here. So here is f is big O of G. What does it mean? It means that f is less than some constant times G. There's another way of writing it. I'm sorry, this is a notation, you have to get used to it. The same thing, exactly same thing. Okay, this is by definition, this G is big O of f. It's something like if you say that f is less than or equal to G, that is same as saying G is greater than or equal to f, right? Similarly, you say that f is big O of G, meaning G is big omega of f. Theta is equivalent to equality, I don't care. And this one is like very small. So if f is small o of G, meaning f is very, very small compared to G, meaning f by G goes to 0, then this means that G is small omega of f. So I will upload this set of notes in the web page. Okay, of course this video will be uploaded, so please go over it. There is the notes that are there also, so please go over them. So it is just a matter of getting used to these notations. Okay, and you will see that these notations are actually very useful for many subjects, particularly if you have to understand how big, small they are and all those things. This is how it is. So we will also be putting up a set of problem set. You don't have to submit it. You don't have to submit it at all. Okay, we will say put up a set of problem sets for your kind of to try it out, just to try out your understanding. Okay. So these are the asymptotic notations that are there. Okay, and there are 2 or 3 some more stuff that are used a lot, which is kind of, I will just mention it particularly. One of them is that when you say that O of 1, what does it O of 1 means? See, O of 1 meaning anything that is a constant. Okay, so this is how anything less than a constant, a constant. Okay, and similarly we have the small o of 1. Small o of 1 is something like 1 by some function of n, where f of n is bigger than, is a increasing function. Anything is fine. 1 by log n is a small o of 1. It's a quantity that is much lower than any constant. Right? And similarly, we have this thing called as big O of 1. Big O of 1 means anything that is bigger than 1, meaning something that is bigger than a constant. When it goes off, it is increasing. So this is any function that is an increasing function. Okay. anything, doesn't matter. If you have heard of this subject called Ackermann function or log-star function or log n, they're all very slow moving functions, but they are still functions that cannot be upper bounded by any constant. So these are the three very useful notations that we can use. Okay, so this is what this comes out. So just to kind of wrap up this stuff from the point of view of the thing. So what did we learn from this P of n? P of n is theta of 1 by n exponential over theta n, right? Now exponential over theta n meaning exponential over some constant times n, right? So I can write this one as P of n is theta of, right, exponential of square root n to the power O of 1, or actually theta of 1 by n. So it is the exponential of n and e to the power square root n to the power some constant, right, pi n. Now of course there are constants hidden here, there are constants hidden here, but at least now you have a better idea, right? Is the partition number, how many possible ways you can do a partition? Is it bigger than e to the power n, or is it comparable to e to the power n? Note that this quantity is small o of e to the power n. Okay, but this quantity again is small omega of n to the power c for any c, okay, or I would say n to the power theta of 1, meaning this number, this function as the function of n is a much faster going function than exponential, than any polynomial. Okay, it's a much faster growing function than any polynomial, but is much smaller than exponential. In fact, because of this n in the denominator, you can even say that this is small o of e to the power square root. Okay, this is actually no, this is not true. No, this is e to the power. Okay, so I should say what is it? So this is small o of e to the power theta square root n. That is, but it is certainly this is true. So at least you have some understanding of P of n. Okay, so this is where asymptotic notations comes in. Okay, so we are not worried too much about the exact function. How does it compute? But we want to know, okay, how good the function is. Okay, so let me leave you with an exercise. I mean, maybe it's there in this one. I mean, exercise meaning these are things for your practice thing. How large is, say, n choose k? Or how large is n factorial? Is n factorial as big as n to the power n? Or is it much smaller than n to the power n? Is it a polynomial in n? Or is it n square root n to the power n? Right? We have a lot of these kind of things that can be asked. What are these? Right? And if you have seen other kind of functions of that form, I mean, there are quite a number of them. I mean, I don't know. So you have seen Catalan numbers, right? Catalan numbers. How big are Catalan numbers? How big are derangement numbers? You all know this. You know these numbers exactly. I completely know that. You must have done it in your combinatorics thing. You know the function exactly. But if suddenly somebody comes up and says that, oh, you pick a you have a Catalan number. I mean, your function is a Catalan number, and my function is say 2 to the power 5n or something like that, right? Or 2 to the power n, or 2 to the power n by 100 or something. Whose number is bigger? As n goes to infinity, who will be getting a more?
Sir,
Yeah.
sir,
Yeah.
sir, can you repeat what you said in the last 1 minute? My connection was kind of off.
Oh, was I audible to the rest of you? Or was I
Yes, sir.
disconnected?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in the last 1 minute, I didn't say too much. I just was asking that these are the exercises that you should look at. Okay.
Okay, sir.
I mean, nothing too much. I mean, like how big? I mean, asymptotically, how big are these quantities?
Okay, sir.
Yes, and another thing that if you guys are interested, particularly if anybody is interested in the world of number theory, arithmetic number theory, and all this kind of stuff, right? So you have heard of this guy called Terry Tao, right? Terence Tao. He has been so he has been proving things like how many AP series are there on primes and so on and so forth, right? Are there infinite number of them and such kind of stuff? All of these statements are actually written in terms of the asymptotic stuff. It's asymptotics is like almost there all over the place, where you kind of want to know this the kind of property of a function rather than the function itself. Sometimes knowing the function from slightly less knowing the function is better than knowing it exactly. I mean, can you argue that this quantity is much better looking and understandable than this quantity over here? Right? You have a, although I know understand that this what Ramanujan's function is a very tight bound, perfect bound kind of stuff like that. But still, when you have to kind of have a feel of a number, then this is how you should go about it. So again, I know that this is a pretty fast crash course in asymptotic numbers, okay, asymptotic notations. So what I will do is that I will, of course, upload this whole notes for you guys online, and this video will be there online. So you feel free to go over it as much as you want, slow it, stop it. If you have doubts, ask me next class. We will try to put up a list of problems that will be useful for you to kind of get your hands dirty kind of stuff like that, meaning a huge number of functions and how are they related to each other. Okay. You should quickly have a feel of how to say which is bigger, which is smaller, which is smaller, which is bigger, and so on. Okay, and this will be kind of very essential for algorithms. Okay, it is very, very, very essential. So, I mean, in short, say something like a constant in front is not something that we are too worried about. Okay, so for example, I mean, this kind of stuff is required, right? That if somebody tells me that I have a function of n square and somebody says that I have a function of n squared by 100, I am not too worried about which of them are bigger and which of them is lesser. Okay, because they are kind of similar. But this 2 on top, on the exponent, it matters. This one I am very worried about. The main idea is that these are all theta. This thing is a theta, but this is small o. Okay, so such kind of understanding is very important. What we are interested in. Okay, even if you replace this 100 by 1 million, for me, as n goes to infinity at some point of time, this function will overshoot this function hands down. So it is the behavior of these functions at infinity that we are more worried about. Okay, and this is the reason why we have the asymptotic notation. Okay, so let me stop. I know that I have also again overshot my class time. But if you guys are interested, feel free to ask me some questions. I mean, I will be available for another 5-10 minutes at least. And yeah. Any doubts, any questions? Okay, so if you guys don't have any questions, then we can stop the class now. I will upload this notes as maybe within an hour or so, and also this video. And good. So I will see you guys on Thursday. Yeah. Right?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.